Hey Mr. Miskey, this is my summative video for my tools class. Let's get started. Well, this is my scanner, which I will be using for almost every single method, since I need it to take inputs. So, let's begin. This is my first method. It's called pause. What it takes is an integer, which will determine how long my program will pause the computer for. It takes the int in milliseconds. So if you want to pause it for 1 second, you would have to input 1000. And if you want to pause it for 2 seconds, you would have to put 2000. And it will go on in this way for every single second or point of a second. This next method is called end-count. It doesn't return anything, but it pauses the program and waits for the user to press enter. The way I've made it is so that the message pops up using JOption pane. When it pops up, it's going to say press enter to continue, and then when I press enter, it'll take me to the next line by s.nextLine. And that is the end of my end-count. This is my next method. It's called reverse string. This method takes a string as a parameter and returns a word in reverse order. So this is what it returns, string, which is also this over here right now. And string word is what we start off with as the parameters. So it starts off with a for loop, and int I starts off at word length -1, which is the very last letter, and then it will only run if I is greater than or equal to 0. And after every single time it runs, I equals I minus 1, meaning it will subtract 1 and go to the come closer to the start of the word, meaning and every time it does this, it will add another letter to string W, making the string print backwards in reverse. That is the end of my reverse string. So it won't print backwards, it's just going to return W to the user, and you can do whatever you want with it. This next method is find max. This method takes 3 integer parameters, it calculates the largest value, and then returns it. This is what it returns, an integer, and inside the bracket is what it takes. 3 ints. Int A, int B, and int C. So first off, if A is greater than or equal to B and A is greater than or equal to C, it will store A as the largest value or integer. And then else if that's not true, if one of those isn't true, then it's going to go down to B and check if B is greater than or equal to A, and if B is greater than or equal to C. If that isn't true, then it's going to go down to the next one to compare C. If C is greater than or equal to A and C is greater than or equal to B, you're going to return C. If none of those are true, you're going to return A, since if B isn't greater than A and C isn't greater than A, that means A is the largest. And that is the end of find max. This next method asks the user a question and informs them if they got the question right or not. This is an integer, and it's using an array called, in our case, string Q. The method itself is called askQuestion. So string input is blank for now. The first element is a question, so system.out.println Q at 0 is going to print out the question. The next part are the possible options you have as answers. So it's going to go through them and print out the options. Next, system.out.println input answer is where you actually input the answer. And after that, if you input the right answer, and it's going to compare it to where it stores the answer at Q1, Q at 1, If it's true, then it will print out you are correct and return 1 point. Else, if that's not true, it's going to print out you are wrong and return -1. And that's the end of ask question. This next method is called find total. It takes an array of integers and returns a total. So, this is what it returns, int, which would be the total of all the integers in the array. And this is the so-called array we're going to be using, int a. So, start off, we just declare total as 0 because there aren't any integers yet. And then it's going to look at the array of integers and go through each and every one and add them at total equals total plus a at I, which is a self-referencing assignment statement. And that is the end of find total. This next method, first or last, compares the first and last integer of an array and returns a larger value. So first it stores the length of the array, and then it compares if a at 0 is greater than a at l minus 1, which is the last number of the array, and if a at 0 is greater, then it's going to return a at 0. Otherwise, if that's not true, it's going to return a at l minus 1, which is the length of the array minus 1, which is also the last integer, because that would have to be greater if the first one isn't. And that is the end of first or last. This next method is count evens. This method takes an array of integers and returns the sum of all even elements. If nums, forget about that. Okay, so let me just repeat that. This method takes an array of integers and returns the sum of all even elements. So it's just going to count all the even numbers in your array. It's called count evens, and it returns int. And what it takes is an array of numbers, which also known as integers. So first off, total equals 0, and that is what it's going to count as the as the even numbers. It's just going to add the even numbers. So the loop goes through each element of the array. So for int I equals 0, it's going to check if the number is even. If the element is even, And if they would do that by using modulus, which gives a remainder. So if nums at I mod 2 is equivalent to 0, they're going to add total plus nums at I. So if the number is even, you're just going to add that to total. At the end, after going through the array, you're just going to return total. For example, up here, it counts all the even numbers. So 1, is it even? No. Then you go on to 3. Is that even? No. Then you go on to 4. Is that even? Yes. So total equals total plus 4. So now total equals 4. Then you go on to the next one. Is that even? Yep. So you add 6 to total. So total is 10 now. Now the next one. 8. Is that even? Yeah, it is. So you add 8 more. So 10 plus 8 is 18. Sorry about the bad math here. Okay, let's move on. That's the end of count evens. This next method is find average. It finds and returns the average of the past array. So what it returns is a double, and what it takes is an integer of arrays. It goes through the array and goes through every single one and adds them all together. At the very end, it divides the average by the number of elements there were in the array, giving you the average as a double. And that's the end of find average. This next method will count a specific letter in a given string and return the number of times it appears. It's called count char. What it takes is a string as str and a character, for in our case called c, and what it returns is an int. So int count equals 0. That is what will store the number of the specific letter in the given string. So we start a for loop which will go through the array, the string, and check if that specific letter is in there. If it is, if str.char at I, which is counting each letter, is equivalent to C, which is the specific letter we are looking for, count equals count plus 1. So that's just an easy way to check how many letters are in, which specific letter is in a specific string. For example, if you type in banana as str and you say ends, how many ends are there in banana? It's going to count it and tell you there are 2 ends in banana. And then at the end of it, it's going to print system.out.println. This has plus count this has count, which is the number of letters, of C's in the array, and C being the letter we're looking for. And that's the end of count char. This next method is a simple method. It should have been way at the top of mine, but I just added it. Is a method that I use to print a string to the dialog. The dialog. What it does, it just prints a string, and so instead of having to type system.out.print every single time, I can just type $ha.print_str and use it the same way. This next one prints new line of given string. What it takes is a string, and it doesn't return anything, but this time it's a little different. It prints a line instead of just having a normal print up here. And it works the exact same way. Just instead of typing system.out.println, you can just use a shortcut, which is $ha period println str, and then whatever you want in brackets and quotation marks. This next thing, and that's the end of println str. This next one is a way to print integers to the screen. This one doesn't return anything either, and all it takes is an integer of numbers, and it's called print int. What it is system.out.print. I just made this method because to be honest, I couldn't find a way to print a bunch of strings and integers and doubles from the same method. So I tried to make a different one, which would do that for me. So this is my tools class. I hope you enjoyed it.